This ridge has looked over Jerusalem for thousands of years. From here the entire dreams of Jerusalem can be seen, the old city and the Temple Mount within it, the desert stretching to the east, and graves that tell stories reaching back to the days of the Bible. I'm Itai, I'm a tour guide here in Israel, and today I want to take you on a journey across the Mount of Olives, exploring it as a stage for some of the most important events in the life of Jesus, as the oldest active Jewish cemetery in the world, and the place where both Jews and Christians hold a shared hope, the anticipation for the coming of the Messiah, that many believe will unfold here on the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is actually a long ridge, about 2 miles in length, with 3 summits. To the north lies Mount Scopus, home today to the Hebrew University. In the center is the main peak and the highest of the 3, where the Augusta Victoria Church and Hospital stands today. Further south, the hill that the Bible once called Mount of Corruption. Why? In the Book of Kings, we read that King Solomon, influenced by his foreign wives, built here high places of worship on the Mount of Olives, altars to the gods of Moab, Ammon, and Sidon. What should have been a hill facing the temple of the Lord became instead a place of idol worshipping. It is described as an act of corruption, a spiritual falling away, and that place identified as a southern peak where today stands Maison Abraham. Centuries later, King Josiah came and defiled those shrines, trying to put an end to that worship. The name remained, Har HaMashchit, the Mount of Corruption. The Mount of Olives is also central to the Gospel story. Nearly every slope on this hill is linked to an event in the life of Jesus. At Bethphage, on the eastern side of the ridge, the Gospel of Luke tells us that Jesus sent 2 disciples to bring a colt. From there, he began his known entry into Jerusalem, greeted by crowds, waving palm branches and shouting, Hosanna. Farther down, to the eastern slope, there is the church called Dominus Flevit, which means the Lord wept. According to tradition, it was here that Jesus looked over Jerusalem and wept after giving the prediction of the destruction of Jerusalem, and in particular, the destruction of the temple. At the foot of the mount lies the Garden of Gethsemane. The name Gethsemane means oil press. Here, beneath the ancient olive trees, Jesus prayed in anguish before his arrest, saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." The Gospels describe how he was betrayed and arrested here, leading to the trial and crucifixion. The olive trees we see today are not from the 1st century, but many of them are around 1,000 years old. Maybe the kids of the trees that were actually here in those days. The Mount of Olives was also the setting of the Olivet Discourse, where Jesus sat on the mountain with his disciples and spoke about the end of the age and his coming again. Tradition recognizes this location on the northern slope, where the Paternoster Church stands today, marking a cave where it is believed that Jesus taught his disciples the Lord's Prayer. The walls of the church of the cloister are covered with the prayer in more than 100 languages. Finally, on the summit of the Mount of Olives stands the Chapel of the Ascension. This small shrine marks a place where, according to tradition, Jesus ascended into the heavens, as described in the books of Acts. For centuries, Christians have come here to commemorate this event. Interestingly, today the chapel is under Islamic Waqf administration, yet it remains a shared holy place that is welcome to all, and all Christian visitors can come and pray and worship there. On the slopes of the mountain lies the oldest and one of the most significant Jewish cemeteries in the world, if not the most of them. It is active since biblical times, and until today people are still being buried in it. Some tombs are monumental from the Second Temple period. In the Kidron Valley below are impressive structures known as the tomb of Avshalom, the tomb of Pnei Chazir, and the tomb of Zechariah. On the mount itself are the tombs of the prophets, a large underground burial cave that tradition associates with the tomb of Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. The archaeologists date it mainly to the 2nd century. All of these sites emphasize how deeply this ridge is tied to Jerusalem's history. Both Jewish Christian and Muslim as well. It is estimated that up to 150,000 people are buried here. And to this day, Jews seek burial here, despite the fact that to be buried here would cost you a lot, while in the rest of the country, burial is provided by the state. Why is it so important to people? The Mount of Olives is deeply connected to the coming of the Messiah. The prophet Zechariah wrote, "On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will split in two." For generations, Jews believed that resurrection would begin here at the coming of the Messiah. To be buried here is to face the Temple Mount and to await redemption from the very place the prophets described it would happen. So you are going to be resurrected anywhere, but if you're buried here, well, the first thing you will see is the Messiah on the Temple Mount. And for many people, it's worth a lot. Some would say it's like reserving the front row seat to the best show of all times, the coming of the Messiah. If you walk through the cemetery, you'll see a small stone placed on the tombs, a common practice in Jewish cemeteries to pay respect to the deceased. But the roots of this tradition might be in the days that when a burial would be taking place, heavy stones would be placed on the tomb to make sure that wild animals don't dig into the tomb during the night to try to catch a snack or a nice meal. The whole community would gather to carry those rocks, and that's how the tradition started, that if you care about someone, if someone deceased and you feel close to him, back then you would go and help carrying those heavy rocks, and slowly, when the need to carry those heavy rocks diminished, remained the tradition that you take a little stone, a little pebble, and you put it on the tomb. Among the many people that are buried here, there are some famous rabbis, scholars like Eliezer ben Yehuda that revived the Hebrew language, and leaders such as former Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Some of them specifically asked to be buried here, and some of them simply died in the time that this was the only major Jewish cemetery in Jerusalem. Another two interesting tombs, although not very old, lie in the Russian Church of Mary Magdalene. The Princess Alice von Battenberg, the mother of Prince Philip and grandmother to King Charles. What is she doing here? Alice was a devout Christian. She spent the last 20 years of her life as a nun, mainly in Greece, and it was her request to be buried here. She also saved Jews during the Second World War and is acknowledged as a righteous among the nations for it. By her side lies her aunt, Princess Elizabeta from Russia, that was murdered with other members of the Romanov family in an abandoned mine in 1918. Her body was taken from Russia to China during the war and was later brought here to a final burial by her sister Victoria. Whether you come here to the Mount of Olives for prophecy, for the gospel stories, or simply to honor those who are resting here, or to enjoy the beautiful views, the Mount of Olives is really more than a hill and one of the most important and interesting places in the entire city of Jerusalem and in the whole country. And as cliché as it sounds, it is a place where past, present and future really all meet. Thank you for joining me on this video. If you enjoyed it, I invite you to like, share and subscribe for more videos from the Holy Land. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you and have a beautiful day.